You have felt it before, that sudden wave that takes over, that feeling that rises so fast, you do not even know it happened until you are already inside it. Anger, anxiety, sadness, fear. And in that moment, it does not feel like something you are experiencing. It feels like something you are. That is the problem. Not the emotion itself, but the fact that somewhere along the way, you stopped being the one who feels and became the feeling itself. Most people believe emotions just happen to them, like weather, like something that arrives from outside and takes over everything inside. And because they believe that, they spend their entire lives being controlled by something they think they cannot control. But that belief is the cage, not the emotion. Here is what is actually true. Your emotions are not random. They are not accidents. They are responses. Specifically, they are the responses of your subconscious mind to the story it believes about reality. Every feeling you have is connected to a belief you hold. Every emotional reaction you experience is your inner world reflecting back at you what it has already accepted as true. This means something very important. If the feeling comes from the belief, then changing the belief changes the feeling. Not forcefully, not by suppression, not by pretending, but by going deeper, by reaching the place where the feeling was born. You were not born anxious. You were not born angry. You were not born emotionally reactive. At some point, a version of reality got recorded inside of you, a moment happened, a pattern repeated, a belief formed, and your subconscious mind, which never argues, which never questions, which only accepts and responds, took that recording and made it your automatic truth. Now, every time a situation arises that matches that old recording, your body fires, your chest tightens, your mind floods, your emotions surge, not because the present moment is dangerous, but because the subconscious is pattern matching it to something old, something that no longer exists, but feels completely real. This is why willpower does not work. You cannot think your way out of a feeling that is not coming from your thinking mind. You cannot white-knuckle your way past something that is operating beneath your awareness. The surface mind says, I will stay calm. But the subconscious has already decided what this moment means, and the subconscious always wins. Not because it is stronger, but because it is deeper. So the question is not, how do I stop feeling this? The question is, who is the person doing the feeling? Because here is the shift that changes everything. When you change your identity, you change your emotional baseline, not your reactions. Your baseline, the place you return to when nothing is happening, the frequency you live at by default. Most people are trying to manage emotions after they have already arrived. That is like trying to stop a flood after the dam has already broken. The real work happens before that. The real work happens in the identity. Think about someone you know or have seen who simply does not get rattled. Not because their life is easier, not because they have not faced pain, but because something inside them is settled. Something inside them does not need external events to be a certain way in order for them to feel okay. They are not managed, they are different. That difference is not a technique. It is an identity. It is the way they see themselves. At the deepest level, and that self-concept determines how their subconscious responds to the world. Your self-concept is the most powerful force operating in your life right now. More powerful than your circumstances. More powerful than other people. More powerful than the events around you, because your self-concept is the lens through which your subconscious interprets everything. If deep down you hold the belief that the world is unsafe, your emotions will reflect that belief constantly. If deep down you hold the belief that you are someone who loses control, your subconscious will deliver that experience faithfully, not to punish you, but because it is doing exactly what it was programmed to do. It is being loyal to your identity. This is not about positive thinking. Let that be clear. Positive thinking is surface level. It changes the words. It does not change the recording. What we are talking about is deeper. We are talking about going into the layer where the emotional patterns were formed and revising them. not by fighting them, not by shaming yourself for having them, but by replacing the identity that is generating them. When you shift who you believe you are, your emotional responses shift with you, not immediately, not all at once, but consistently, because the subconscious does not hold on to what no longer matches the identity it has accepted. It lets it go, not because you forced it to, but because there is nothing left to attach it to. You are not someone who cannot control emotions. That is a story. It may feel like a fact. It may have years of evidence behind it. It may feel woven into who you are, but it is still a story, and stories can be rewritten, not with effort, with a deeper truth, the person you want to be, the version of you who moves through the world with calm, with steadiness, with emotional groundedness. That person is not far away from you. That person is not someone else. That person is the version of you that exists when the old story is removed, when the old programming no longer has a host. You do not need to become someone new. You need to remember who you were before the world told you what to feel and when to feel it. That is where we are going. There is a moment, a split second, between what happens to you and how you respond to it. Most people never find that moment. They go from trigger to reaction so fast, it feels like there is no space between them, like the event and the emotion are the same thing. But they are not. They never were. That space between stimulus and response, that is where your freedom lives, not in controlling the world around you, not in removing every difficult person or painful situation from your life, but in that gap, that tiny invisible space where you still have a choice. The problem is, most people's gap is so small, it might as well not exist. And the reason it is small is not because they are weak. It is because their subconscious has been running the same automatic response for so long that it has become instant. It has become reflex. Reflex does not ask permission. It does not check with your conscious mind. It fires, and it fires fast. This is why you can know intellectually that you should not react and still react. This is why you can tell yourself 100 times to stay calm and still feel the wave come, because the intellectual knowing lives in the surface mind, but the reflex lives below, in the body, in the nervous system, in the subconscious patterns that have been rehearsed thousands of times without you realizing it. So how do you change a reflex? You do not fight it. You do not suppress it. You retrain it. And you retrain it not by repetition of behavior, but by revision of identity. Because the reflex is not random. The reflex is assigned. It is assigned to the person your subconscious believes you are. Change that person, and the reflex changes with them. This is the part most people skip. They want the technique, they want the breathing exercise, the counting method, the distraction strategy. And those things are not wrong. But they are management tools. They help you cope with a pattern that is still running underneath. What we are talking about goes further than coping. We are talking about dissolving the pattern at its root. The root is always the same. It is a belief about yourself. Every emotional pattern you have is held in place by a belief about who you are. The person who explodes in anger holds a belief somewhere deep inside that they are powerless. That anger is the only thing that makes people listen. That force is the only way to feel safe. The person who collapses in anxiety holds a belief somewhere deep inside that the world is unpredictable, that they are not capable of handling what might come. The person who shuts down emotionally holds a belief somewhere inside that feeling is dangerous, that being seen is unsafe. The emotion is the symptom, the belief is the cause. And here is what makes this so important. You cannot heal a symptom permanently without addressing the cause. You can push the symptom down, you can distract from it. You can manage it well enough to function, but it will keep returning in the same form or a different one, because the belief is still there, unchanged, waiting. This is why some people feel like they have worked on themselves for years, read the books, done the therapy, tried the practices, and still find themselves in the same emotional loops, not because the work was wrong, but because the work stayed at the level of behavior and never went deep enough to reach the identity. The identity is the operating system. Everything else runs on top of it. If the operating system is unchanged, you can update the apps all you want. The core experience stays the same. So this is what the real work looks like. It starts with honesty, not brutal self-criticism, not shame, honest observation. You look at your emotional patterns the way a scientist looks at data, without judgment, without attachment, without the need for the data to be different than it is. You simply ask, what does this pattern tell me about what I believe about myself? When you feel anxiety rise, instead of immediately trying to stop it, you get curious about it. You ask, what does this feeling assume is true about me? Does it assume I am fragile? Does it assume I cannot cope? Does it assume the outcome will be bad, because bad outcomes happen to people like me? When you feel anger surge, you ask the same question, what does this anger believe about who I am? Does it believe I am disrespected? Does it believe my worth depends on how others treat me? Does it believe I have no control unless I react loudly? You are not asking these questions to analyze yourself into paralysis. You are asking them to find the belief, because once you find the belief, you have found the root, and once you have found the root, you can replace it. The replacement does not happen through argument. You cannot logic your way into a new subconscious belief. The subconscious does not respond to logic. It responds to feeling. It responds to repetition. It responds to the deep, quiet certainty of a new identity being assumed and held. This is where the inner work becomes something almost meditative. You begin to hold a new version of yourself in your awareness, not as a goal, not as something you are trying to become, but as something you are choosing to accept as true right now, in this moment. The version of you who is emotionally grounded, the version of you who feels without being consumed, the version of you who can experience difficulty without becoming it. You sit with that version. You breathe from that place. You let that identity settle into your body, not just your mind, because the subconscious speaks body language. It communicates through sensation, through posture, through the quality of your breath. When you embody a new identity, you are not pretending. You are impressing. You are pressing a new pattern into the subconscious through the language it actually understands. And over time, something begins to shift, not dramatically, not all at once, but you notice it. The gap gets wider. That space between trigger and response, the one that used to feel non-existent, starts to grow. You feel the familiar wave begin, and something inside you does not follow it the way it used. There is a pause, a quiet steadiness, a part of you that observes instead of reacts. That is not detachment. That is not coldness. That is not the absence of feeling. That is the presence of self, the self that exists beneath the emotion, the self that is not defined by the feeling, the self that can hold the feeling without being held by it. That is who you are becoming. Not someone who does not feel. Someone who feels fully and remains whole. Someone who experiences the storm and does not become the storm. That version of you is not a fantasy. It is not reserved for people with different circumstances, different childhoods, different wiring. It is available to you right now, through the same subconscious mind that created the old patterns. Because the same mechanism that recorded the limitations can record the freedom. The same depth that held the old identity can hold the new one. You are not broken. You are not damaged beyond repair. You are someone whose subconscious has simply been running an outdated program, and programs can be updated, not by force, by presence, by intention, by the quiet, certain decision to be someone different at the deepest level. That decision is yours. It has always been yours. You have come far enough now to understand something most people never will. Emotional control is not a skill. It is not a technique you master through practice and discipline. It is not something you do. It is something you become, and becoming is A different process entirely from doing. Doing lives on the surface. Doing is effort. Doing is the constant management of something that keeps returning. Becoming lives below. Becoming is integration. Becoming is the moment the new identity stops feeling like something you are trying and starts feeling like something you are. That moment is coming for you, not because you will force it, because you will allow it. There is a version of your daily life that looks completely different from the inside, not because the outside has changed, the same people, the same pressures, the same unpredictable moments. But your internal experience of those things is no longer the same, because you are no longer the same. When someone says something that used to cut, you feel it land, but it does not sink the way it used to. When a situation arises that used to spiral you, you notice the familiar pull, but you are not pulled the same distance. When the old wave rises, it rises smaller. It passes faster. It leaves less behind. This is not numbness. Please understand that. This is not the grey flatness of someone who has shut themselves off. This is aliveness. This is the ability to feel everything without being destroyed by anything. This is the emotional range of someone who has found their ground. Your ground is your identity, not your mood, not your circumstances, not the way others treat you. Your identity, the deep, settled, unshakable sense of who you are that exists regardless of what is happening around you. When that identity is solid, emotions move through you the way weather moves through the sky. They come, they are real, they are felt, and then they go, without leaving destruction, without rewriting your reality, without pulling you into a version of yourself you do not recognize. This is what it means to be emotionally grounded, not to feel less, to be more present, more stable, more yourself. Now here is what the practice actually looks like from this point forward. Not a rigid system, not a morning checklist, a way of living from the inside out. Every time you notice an emotion rising, you do not brace against it. You do not immediately try to change it. You simply notice that you are the one noticing, that there is an observer in you. Part of you that is watching the feeling and is not the feeling. That observer is your real self. That is the part of you that is always calm, always present, always untouched by what the surface is experiencing. You begin to live from that place more, not from the reactive layer, not from the part that fires automatically, not from the old recordings, from the observer, from the part of you that chose to read this, that chose to seek this, that already knows there is something deeper available. And as you live more from that place, something extraordinary happens. The emotional reactions that used to feel automatic begin to feel like choices. Not because you are forcing them, but because you have created enough distance between yourself and the pattern that the pattern no longer feels like you. It feels like something that passes through you, and you get to decide how much attention you give it, how long you stay inside it, how much of your identity you hand over to it. You begin to choose, and choosing, after a lifetime of reacting, feels like coming home. The subconscious mind is always listening, always recording, always accepting whatever you most deeply and consistently impress upon it. This is not a metaphor. This is how you were built. And from this day forward, you can use that mechanism consciously. Every moment you catch yourself returning to the observer, you are impressing something new. Every moment you choose to identify with the grounded version of yourself, even for a second, even in the middle of the storm, you are feeding the new identity. Every time you refuse to let the old pattern define what this moment means about you, you are revising the recording. This is not instant. Let that be said clearly. There is no magic switch. There is no single moment where everything changes. There is only the consistent, quiet, deliberate return to the truth of who you are, over and over, in small moments, in ordinary moments, in the moments where no one is watching and the old habit calls the loudest. Those are the moments that build the new identity, not the grand gestures, not the breakthroughs, the small, private returns. And one day, not far from now, You will be in a situation that used to own you, a situation that used to send you into the spiral, into the flood, into the version of yourself you were trying to leave behind, and you will feel it. You will feel the familiar signal, but something will be different. There will be a steadiness underneath it that was not there before, a quiet, a knowing. And in that moment, you will not need to remember anything. You will not need to apply a technique. You will not need to white-knuckle through it. You will simply be who you have been becoming, and that will be enough, more than enough, because you were never someone who could not handle this. You were someone who had not yet found the deeper layer of themselves, where the handling happens effortlessly. You were someone who was operating from old information about who you were and what you were capable of. That information is no longer accurate. You are not the anxiety. You are not the anger. You are not the grief that lingered too long, or the fear that kept returning, or the sadness that sometimes felt like weather that would never clear. You are the one who experiences those things. You are the sky, not the storm. The storm can be real. The storm can be intense. The storm can be the most difficult thing you have ever moved through, and you can still be the sky, vast enough to hold it, steady enough to survive it, deep enough to remain yourself while it passes. That depth is not something you find. It is something you remember. It was there before the first time someone made you feel small. It was there before the first pattern got recorded without your permission. It was there in the version of you that existed before the world decided what your emotions should be. It is still there. It has never left. You are returning to it now. Not rushing. Not forcing. Not performing a version of calm that is only skin deep. Returning, genuinely, deeply, permanently. This is what emotional control actually is. Not the iron grip of someone who refuses to feel, the open hands of someone who feels everything and is moved by nothing permanently, who bends without breaking, who softens without collapsing, who remains always themselves. That is who you are. That is who you have always been. And now, finally, you know how to come back to it.